If you've ever wondered, is my child in too much therapy? You're not alone. I've worked with so many families who have the absolute best interest in their heart for their child. They want their child to get all the necessary therapy and support that the child needs. They also worry that therapy may be taking over their child's life. As a pediatric occupational therapist, I want to share with you what I've learned over the years, and I want to share with you about how too much therapy can actually backfire. It is definitely possible to have a healthy balance where your child gets the supports they need without overdoing it, while allowing your child to still make progress and to still learn and to still be happy during the process. So the first thing you should know is that therapy is meant to support your child's daily routines. It's not meant to become a daily routine for them. When you're running from OT to speech to developmental to physical therapy to behavioral therapy, ABA, right? You have all these therapies lined up for your child 5 days a week, right? And you're doing it because you feel like your child truly needs as much support as possible. But then you have to take a step back and ask yourself a few questions. Like, is this causing you and your family more stress than it is relief? Or does the child always feel like they're working? Remember, the real magic happens when therapy strategies blend into your daily life. So therapy strategies should naturally blend into your morning routine or bedtime routines or during lunchtime or during bath time. So if therapy is leaving your child super exhausted, or you and your family super exhausted, or you and your family super stressed, it may be time to reevaluate a few things. Do you really need all 5 to 6 types of therapy? Or if you do need a variety of therapies, what frequency of therapies do you truly need? Do you really need to see every single therapist every single week? Or can you decrease how frequent you see these therapists, right? So maybe, for example, OT, you may be able to see them weekly, but for speech, do you really need to see them every single week? Or can you cut down to twice a month, right? Or vice versa. So think about how often your child sees all these therapists and ask them, is this truly what my child needs, or would it be okay for us to decrease services? Because you have to remember, the magic of therapy is what happens outside of therapy. So a big part of therapy is you learning the strategies that your therapist is teaching you so that you can implement these things outside of just that hour a week that you may see your particular therapist. Remember, just like adults can burn out from too much, kids can also burn out from doing too much. So what are some signs of burnout for a child? Well, number 1, you may start to notice that your child is having more meltdowns than typical. They may be having more meltdowns either before or right after therapy. Another sign of burnout could be your child completely engaging in some type of avoidance behaviors, or maybe them just verbally telling you, like, I don't want to go. And it's not, and I don't mean for those kids who like just have a day here and there where they're just like, I'm tired, I don't want to go. We all have those days. But if it becomes a consistent daily thing when you have to really like beg your child to go, and your child has multiple therapies, that could be a sign that your child is on the verge of burnout. And another huge sign is that if you start to notice that your child is making slower progress despite having more therapies, that could be a sign that maybe less is actually more, and maybe more is not the best at this time for your child. So these are all signs and indicators that your child needs a break, or your child is experiencing too much therapy and maybe you need to dial it back a little bit. Remember, progress does not come from necessarily how many therapies and how many hours a week your child has therapy. True progress comes when your child is actually learning, where they're actually receptive, where they're actually having fun, and where they're engaged and having a great connection with that adult or with that caregiver or with the therapist in their life. You have to remember that more hours of therapy does not always equal faster progress. I know it's very tempting to think, well, if we just add a few more sessions, we'll see more growth. But that's not always the case. Sometimes kids do best when they have more time to generalize and practice what they've learned. And if they're constantly in therapies back to back to back to back to back, you're not even giving them enough time to process everything that they're learning. And therefore, you're not even giving them enough time to generalize it so that they can even show that they are receiving and receptive to everything that they're learning. Remember, if therapy becomes like their daily job, that child is really missing out on the key fundamental of things that really do help children progress. And those things are play, exploration, and simply just being a kid. Remember, sometimes kids learn the best when they're just being naturally in their environment and being naturally themselves. So instead of thinking about adding more therapies and more therapies and more hours, you really should be focusing more so on that connection versus always having a full schedule of therapy appointments lined up for your child. So remember, you being consistent at home with your child, you having that connection at home with your child is going to do way better and have way more success instead of you adding another clinical hour of therapy with your child. Healthy balance of therapy and just naturally living life is going to be the best for everyone involved. Sometimes having a lighter therapy schedule or even taking a short break when necessary will help the whole family reset. I mean, I remember so many occasions from myself or even other therapists I hear when we go on vacation, right? Or when the child goes on vacation, right? And they miss maybe a couple weeks or so of therapy, but then they come back and mom or dad reports all these new skills that they've learned. That's because they were busy not being bombarded by therapy for 2 weeks in a row. They were busy just naturally learning, naturally living, and maybe even generalizing some of those skills that they learned during therapy. So if you do decide to decrease services, right, for some of your therapies, or if you do decide to take a short break, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't value therapy. It doesn't necessarily mean you're doing harm to your child. And it doesn't mean that you're giving up. It simply means that you are creating space for more rest, more joy, and just more natural learning and natural playing experiences for your child. A well-rested and happy child will always typically learn faster than a child that is stressed and overwhelmed. So yes, there is a such thing as too much therapy. So if you found this video to be helpful, you may want to stick around and watch my next video on why play is often the missing secret ingredient when it comes to your child's development. I'll link that video here as well as in the description below. And tell me in the comments below, have you ever felt like you've had your child put in too many therapies, or do you know a child that you work with that may be experiencing way too much therapy? Leave that in the comments below and let's have a conversation about it. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, share it with a loved one who may also benefit from learning more about early child development, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!